So when you think of the word genius, who pops into your head? Maybe Einstein? Leonardo da Vinci? Well, what if I told you that history's first true genius, the original polymath, lived thousands of years before any of them? We're going way, way back, over 4,600 years, to meet an Egyptian visionary who literally built for eternity. His name was Imhotep, and his story is going to change the way you see the ancient world.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. We always hear about the Greeks and Romans, right? They get so much credit for the foundations of Western civilization. But this reminds us that the real story starts so much earlier, in the sands of Egypt. And this man, Imhotep, he wasn't just stacking stones, he was laying the groundwork for what was to come.
And this is it, his masterpiece, the Step Pyramid at Saqqara. Now, I know, it looks like an ancient ruin, but you have to understand, this was a total game changer. Before this building, everything important was made of mud brick. You know, stuff that was designed to crumble. Imhotep looked at that and said, nope. He chose stone. He was building for eternity. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a revolution.
So who was this guy serving Pharaoh Djoser back in Egypt's Old Kingdom? Well, he was everything. The word we'd use today is polymath, a true master of multiple fields, a Renaissance man thousands of years before the Renaissance. And his first great act of genius was about to change the world.
Okay, so let's dig into that first piece of his genius, the one you can still go and see today, his architecture. And we're not just talking about designing a building. No, he invented a whole new way to build from the ground up.
Here's the deal. Before Imhotep, if you were a pharaoh, this is what your tomb looked like. A mastaba, flat-roofed, made of mud brick. It was functional, I guess, but it wasn't going to last forever. Imhotep comes along and just rips up the rulebook. He wasn't thinking about a tomb, he was thinking about a stairway to the heavens. And he wasn't using mud, he was using eternal limestone. This was a whole new way of thinking about life, death, and what you leave behind.
And what's so cool is that you can actually see his mind at work here. This thing wasn't built from a single perfect plan. It evolved. It started as a traditional mastaba, but then you can almost hear Imhotep thinking, we can do better. So they stacked another one on top and another, creating a 4-step pyramid. Still not satisfied, so he expanded it again to the final 6-step monument. That right there, that's innovation in action.
And just to put that into perspective for you, this thing stood about 62.5 meters tall. That's like a modern 20-story building. Think about that. We're in the 27th century BC. They're basically inventing large-scale stone construction as they go. The sheer ambition is just staggering.
You know, for most people, building the world's first skyscraper out of stone, that would be enough for one lifetime. You'd call it a day. But for Imhotep, that was just his warm-up. Seriously, his true genius wasn't just in what he built, but in how he thought.
Right, because a blueprint for eternity can't just be made of stone, can it? There has to be more. And oh boy, was there more. This is where the story gets even crazier, because the man who just redefined architecture was about to do the exact same thing for medicine.
I mean, just look at this resume. It's insane. He wasn't just the chief architect, he was the vizier. That's basically the prime minister. He was the high priest of Heliopolis, the intellectual center of all Egypt. He was a renowned physician, a scribe, a sage, a poet. This guy didn't just have a specialty, he mastered everything he touched.
And this is the part that really blows my mind. We all learn about Hippocrates in school, the father of medicine. Well, get this. Imhotep was diagnosing and treating illnesses with a rational, scientific mindset over 2,000 years before Hippocrates was even born. 2 millennia. That completely reframes the history of medicine.
This is the key difference right here. At the time, if you got sick, the solution was magic. Spells, chants, blaming angry gods, that was the standard practice. Imhotep comes along and basically says, hold on, let's actually look at the patient. Let's diagnose the problem. Ancient texts, which scholars believe are copies of his writings, describe surgical procedures and anatomical observations. He was essentially inventing clinical medicine from scratch.
So let's recap. He's reinvented architecture. He's reinventing medicine. What do you do for a guy like that? Well, the ancient Egyptians decided there was only one possible thing to do: give him the highest honor a human could ever receive.
This timeline is just wild. Most people are forgotten over time. Imhotep's legacy just grew bigger and bigger. 2,000 years after he died, they made him a god. Not just a hero, a literal god of medicine and wisdom. And then, centuries after that, when the Greeks showed up, They were so impressed they basically said, wow, this guy is our god of healing, Asclepius. That is staying power. And I really have to stress how rare this was. This almost never happened. Pharaohs, sure, they were considered divine. That was part of the job. But for a commoner, a non-royal guy, to be elevated to godhood, it was practically unheard of. It just goes to show you the sheer scale of his genius.
So where does that leave us? How do you even begin to sum up the impact of a figure like Imhotep? Well, his legacy isn't just a pyramid. It's nothing less than a blueprint for human potential.
And honestly, this quote just nails it. We use the term Renaissance man for people like Da Vinci, a genius in art, science, engineering. Well, Imhotep was the original model. He was the prototype 2,000 years earlier, proving that true genius is absolutely timeless.
And to top it all off, there's one last little detail that I think is just beautiful. His name, Imhotep. It translates to, he who comes in peace.
He came in peace, but his ideas were a revolution that echoed through millennia. It leaves you with that ultimate question, doesn't it? How does one mind lay the foundation for eternity? Well, Imhotep's story suggests the answer, by daring to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be.